Well, when I talk to people, left-wingers, people on the left, about my movie, most of them won't watch it. They don't. No, I don't want to see that. That was an insurrection. Those people should all go to jail. They don't want. They won't. They can't bear to look at it. I even had to fire my own agent just over the Christmas holidays because I was talking to him about about the movie and the premieres and the stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to watch that." I go,
"What,
dude? You're my agent. You're not going to watch my work because you're afraid of what? It's just a movie. Michael Moore makes them for your side all the time. Yeah. You can't even look at it." And he said, "No, I just don't want to. That was a riot. Full stop." And I go, "Well, I guess then you don't want to be my agent anymore."
Was that over the phone or via text?
Yeah, it was over the phone.
Weird.
Yeah.
Well, so I think what happens in their minds, and again, maybe I'm over-pathologizing here, but I think this is probably a reasonable assessment of the potential motivation here. A person might think, okay, there could be information here that will change my mind, but I don't want to be the person who knows that January 6th wasn't an insurrection because there is a very high social cost to pay for having that awareness.
You bet. You bet. Especially in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
I went back to my parents' house for Christmas, and they were like, "Well, what do you think about that insurrection at the Capitol?" I was like, "What do you mean? Like when they stood inside the old building and just stood in the hallways?" And I was like, "The government can operate from anywhere digitally. It's not a real insurrection would be cutting off the electricity to the continent. Like if you want to talk about insurrection." And they were like, he's right."
Well, the other thing too about that day, it's like the media only showed you the violence. They only showed you the little pieces, the clips right at the Capitol of the windows being broken and Ashley Babbitt being killed and all that. That's all they showed you. There were 2 million people there that day. There were so many people, and they never showed you
2 million?
the crowd. Yes, that we have estimates of 2 million people.
Wow.
There's a shot in my movie that I had never seen before we found it of just the size of the crowd, and it's breathtaking. I mean, it's amazing.
They conflate the rally, which occurred some ways away from the Capitol, with the insurrection. So for a lot of people, maybe like your parents, Ian, who don't actually investigate or know what's going on, they're told that their image of this is probably Trump brought hundreds of thousands of people to the Capitol and stood outside and said, "Go be strong and shut it down."
Exactly.
Whereas what really happened is that there was a rally blocks away where a bunch of people rallied and waved little American flags, and then Trump, while he was still speaking, people went to the Capitol.
Yeah, and the people that were breaking in, they were breaking windows at the Capitol 15 minutes before Trump stopped speaking. Who were those people? This guy Ray Epps that's been in the news lately, he and his crew were taking down all the fencing and all the signs that said "Do not enter, restricted area." They took down all that fencing so that when the people walked from the speech to the Capitol building, they didn't know that they were entering a restricted area. And a lot of the defendants are charged with that, entering a restricted area. And they said that we didn't see anything that said it was restricted.
Is there video of Ray and other people removing those signs?
I've seen some of it. It's not in our movie, but I've seen
What I'm concerned about is how deepfakes in the future will start twisting video. But for now, video seems to be a pretty good documentable evidence, kind of. But I know deepfakes are real.
Yeah.
They are real, and what do we do about them?
Well, I don't know.
Well, but here's the problem. I mean, people are talking about deepfakes, but we have that technology is not far along enough for us to make the argument. And if it is that far along, we don't know about it. As far as we are aware, that technology is not far along enough for something like this to be faked. But even with the actual real video evidence that is there and available, people still buy into the narrative.
Yeah, they won't look at it. They won't. They will not take that in.
No, yeah, I agree. It's like, continue your point. I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt.
No, well, they just won't look at the video, whether it's fake or not, if it doesn't support their narrative.
Yeah.
This past week, they just released 3 more angles of Ashley Babbitt's death that were taken from different places in the hall. And you can see Ashley Babbitt was actually telling the people breaking the windows to stop that. Stop doing that. Ashley Babbitt was talking to the police officers and saying, "What are you doing? Why aren't you calling for reinforcements? There's more people coming up here." And she actually punched a guy that was like trying to break a window. So it's like this whole narrative about Ashley Babbitt being some crazed right-wing Trump supporter is absolutely a total lie. And they knew it from the beginning.
What, somebody punched through a window and then she stood up and they saw her and they fired?
Yeah, well, the window had been broken, and I don't know why she got in that window, but there is video of her telling people to stop breaking stuff, stop doing that, talking to the police saying, you need more people up here, you've got to stop this. She was on the side of the police, and her husband Aaron says that he feels like he knew that she was claustrophobic, and he thinks that just sort of the crush of the people coming up and all the chaos caused her to panic and to jump into the window, and that's when the police officer fired. And if you watch the video, Bird, the police officer, has his gun trained at that window for like 30, 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Before she's even there.
Probably the window got broken. He was like, watch that entrance. Something's going to come through there.
Yeah. And while he's standing there pointing the gun, people are right here beside or near him hitting the window with 2x4s and trying to break the window. And he never trains the gun on them. He's pointed right at that one window. It's very strange.
That sounds to me like he was angry at the person who broke the window and wanted them to suffer. That would be my assessment. That because he didn't feel threatened, obviously. Otherwise, he'd focus on the other side of things. But my assumption, it's just my assumption, is that he sees someone smash the window and he goes, "That son of a," and he pulls his gun. He's like, "Come on, do it."
Have you ever been in combat before?
Yeah, but me?
Yeah,
No.
I never have.
Well, Ashley was not the one who broke the window.
No, I know.
Yeah, but
so that's
she
why he had his
jumped
gun
through
drawn
it.
at the full time, because he wanted whoever broke that window, for whatever they did, he was going to get him.
Yeah, maybe.
And so when she came in, she's the one who got the bullet.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So how do you I think what we see when you make the movie Capital Punishment, you just said your agent wouldn't even watch it. What's happening is a natural sorting algorithm is occurring. People who are willing to say I will challenge my perceptions, and that's why you have people like Bridget Fetisi, politically homeless, now more aligned with like intellectual dark web types, conversing with Ben Shapiro conservatives, because these are all people who are willing to be wrong,
right,
and have their perception challenged. It's being sorted between two groups: those who don't want out, who just want to be told what to think, and those who are more inquisitive, more discerning. I mean, I've said something similar to this before. There's the uninitiated and the more discerning, the people who don't watch the news, who don't investigate, and the people who do. What is your view? So knowing what you know, having to fire your own agent, where do you think all of this is going to lead to with what they're doing with law enforcement, January 6th committee, and the fact that regular people are refusing to even learn the truth? Where do you think it goes?
Well, you mean in terms of the government, they're never going to give this narrative up. They're never going to stop. And what they're doing to these defendants now is railroading them into plea deals. Most of them are charged with, you're facing 28 years. You go before a D.C. jury that's 96% Democrat. I don't like your chances. If you plead guilty to this one little felony, then, you maybe do 6 months, or maybe even you just get probation. But you can't vote anymore. You can't own a firearm. And they're basically, by doing this, they are neutralizing a whole group of people that disagree with them, and the intention that they're trying to spread a ripple through the community of, by prosecuting these people so publicly, they're sending the message that don't ever be one of these people, or we'll do this to you. So I think the government is never going to give that up. They're going to run that into the ground, and the only thing we can do is try to fight that.
You just said something very scary. You go before a jury that's 96% Democrat. We can't function as a constitutional republic if there are two tribes, and I mean that literally, and they will put you in prison if you're in the opposing tribe.
Yeah. And another thing about that D.C. system is that you have to be licensed to practice law in D.C. You can't, if you get arrested in Florida and you have a good lawyer, you can't bring him with you unless he's, licensed to practice in D.C. So all these lawyers, they're all D.C. residents. 96% of them are Democrats too, and they literally hate the people that they're defending. They want them to go to jail. And so these court-appointed attorneys are really working for the government to try to punish these people that dared stand up to the Democrat Party.
The judicial system is supposed to be nonpartisan, I believe.
It's supposed to
Isn't
be.
that the point? So
Yeah.
when did that change? Right after it got formed?
It's cultural enforcement. It used to be when we were a cohesive nation that people viewed each other as Americans. People took jury duty a bit more seriously, and now because of the overt tribalism of the culture war, I said it in reference to Pennsylvania. It shows what's happening here now. In Pennsylvania, when the Republicans said, hey, this universal mail-in voting law is unconstitutional, the judge's response was, you're a Republican, so you lose. And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
He said, your guy lost, and now you're coming and suing. His guy, he's an individual bringing a lawsuit. His political party is irrelevant to the material. Well, it turns out afterwards, oh, you were right, it was unconstitutional. But the judge was partisan.
Yeah.
And now you have this ruling of unconstitutionality. It's Republican judges saying it's unconstitutional and Democrats saying it is. If we're at the point, and we are, if this is how the country is going to work, if you're a Republican, if you're right-winger, and you advocate for a right-wing cause in D.C., you will go to prison because they will view, bro.
Well, they had that last rally I didn't go to because of what you're saying now.
I'm saying if you do something that is construed as a crime, I'm not saying like literally walking down the street, they're going to come and arrest you. I'm saying if you are in a protest and advocating for something, if I'll put it this way, if you brought a boat down to DC to protest abortion, yeah, they're going to lock you up. They're going to throw the book at you. Whereas when Extinction Rebellion does it, it's a slap on the wrist, clear it out, tow it out, and then send them on their way.
You know, I didn't go to the Robert Malone big speech in I think it's February 23rd, or no, it was a month ago or 3 weeks ago. And yeah. I'm almost kicking myself for it because I didn't go out of fear. I was afraid that the government was going to stage a false flag and then arrest a bunch of people. And I don't want to live in terror of my own government.
And that's intentional. That's what they're trying to do is make everybody scared. That's why they're doing this to these people. That's why the overwhelming show of force in their little suburban neighborhoods, handcuffing their wives and daughters, that's what they're doing. And even me, after I went on January 6th and I shot a bunch of iPhone stuff and just like a tourist, I was afraid to tell anybody that I went right after it happened because I was like, I'm not going to post these pictures because the FBI might look through the pictures and find somebody, in the crowd behind me or something. It's like it was such a pervasive attitude of they're coming after us,
Right.
And that is intentional.
That's what they want.
What they
Yeah.
want.
I think you're right about them making an example of the people who were involved in January 6th because I think that's what they're doing with Joe Rogan right now. They're like, if we can get the biggest guy and make an example of him. And I wanted to say, too, that this talk about the jury is making me wonder if this is what drives a national divorce. I don't know that there's a way to coexist in a world where if you get arrested for something like a traffic ticket or something in D.C. and you have to go before a court, you know for a fact that they're going to throw the book at you because they disagree with your politics. How do we go on like that? I don't see that as being sustainable. Is there a solution to that?
And national divorce always will lead to full-on civil war.
That doesn't end well. Yeah.
Well, so what are your thoughts on that? There was a period where we had a few experts in security say, "Oh, civil war is possible." I became particularly bullish on it, saying I think we're heading in the direction. But now we're actually getting Democrat personalities. The Guardian put out an article saying the civil war has already begun. We're in it. You got the Washington Post now saying the same thing. When we talk about the courts making their rulings based on political party, it's scary. And then you come to us and say, oh, and also the juries themselves are comprised of individuals who are tribal partisans. Sounds to me like civil war.
Well, I think the reason that they're talking about this, the Democrats that are talking about civil war, it's honest. That's what they want. That's what they want. They're trying to sell this idea that everybody who went to Washington on January 6th is some sort of crazed, violent, insurrectionist, seditionist who wants to start a civil war and create. That's the narrative that they're selling. So
I agree.
Yeah.
You want to know why? What's the one way you get rid of the Constitution?
Habeas corpus,
martial
suspend
law.
it.
Civil war.
Yeah, civil war.
You can't get rid of the Constitution through any means that exists within the current government. The government would have to be in some way split, fractured, or altered. So if there was mass rioting and they came out and said, we need the Insurrection Act, martial law, you can't get rid of the Constitution. If even under Bush's Presidential Directive 51, you can't get rid of the Constitution. In a civil war, the Constitution is gone.
Emergency.
Right.
The
No, the
directive,
emergency doesn't do it.
Directive 51 is terrifying. Is it in place right now?
Yes.
I was reading about it last night, and it's saying like if there's any issue anywhere,
Yep.
that like economic or environmental, any like severe issue, they say something, the word severe is in there, and who defines that? The president, apparently, that they can just, what is it, like morph all power? I didn't go so far on it last night, but is it that they can morph all powers under one branch of government?
Are you familiar with Presidential Directive 51?
No.
It's not been tested. It may just be a stupid statement made by Bush. It's been revised several times under the previous presidents. I think even Trump may have revised it. Basically says that if there is any kind of disaster anywhere in the world, the president has the authority to dissolve the government and reform it under a single branch, a constitutional government. So it would have to abide by the original rules, and it would the three branches of government would be organized by would be controlled by the National Continuity Coordinator under the executive branch. They could try it. It might go to the courts, but it's an interesting circumstance when one branch asserts the authority over the other two, and then one of those branches by which they're subjugated by this other branch says, we reject your authority. It doesn't really make sense how that would play out. Like, if the executive branch says, you report to us now, and the court says, we hereby decree we don't.
Yeah.
Well, the guys with guns are going to show up and say, yes, you do.
Yeah.
And that's a power created by Bush. And there's been other versions of it, but it's been updated several times.
It's not a coincidence. The executive branch has the word execute in it.
Well, that's what it means.
To not only make something happen, to execute the plan, but also to execute someone.
That's, yes, literally what the executive branch does. They
Crazy.
They're the ones with the guns who go out and enforce the law.
I thought they were supposed to execute the law.
Yeah.
Well,
Enforcement.
sure.
Yeah,
Not
that's
execute
how
the
you do it.
people, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's why they're trying to take the guns too. I mean,
Exactly.
that's part of it. They want to make sure that we can't defend ourselves if they decide to attack.
Well, let's be honest. If they did, we have seen things like Waco and Ruby Ridge. Most people would just smile and put their hands behind their back and go along wherever they were supposed to be going. And that's what happened in let's use the most talked about trope and cliche, Nazi Germany. There were a lot of people who at a certain point just said, it's getting bad, we got to get out of here. But most people just said it can't happen here.
Yep.
Until it did. And a lot of people, I've been reading more and more about it for obvious reasons. I've also been reading about the Spanish Civil War. They'd show up to the house, knock on the door, and say, for your safety, you're coming with us, get in the cart. And they'd be like, okay, let me grab my things. And they'd say, okay, and they'd take the people off. Some, often without their things, just no, take your family, you're coming, it's for your own safety, you have to do it. And people just said yes. We're seeing that in Australia.
Yep.
Not like they're taking people in Australia to, work camps to rot them out till they die. But it's crazy to me that there's a video out of Australia where the cops show up to a guy's house unannounced and they say, sir, you have tested positive for COVID and you are now being indefinitely quarantined. Get in the van. And he goes, all right, mate. And he just hops in the van. And I'm just like, wow. Crazy.
yeah, the Germans used typhus as an excuse. They said a lot of the Jewish population had typhus. I don't know if that was the reason for taking them on the trains, but maybe that was like, for your own safety, we don't want you to get sick. Come with us.
It was one of the propaganda things they were claiming about, these ghettos are dirty and they have typhus, so they have to be taken to special facilities. And we know how that went. And, look, we look back at history. I don't think history is going to repeat itself. History rhymes. Mm-hmm. And so, people who are ignorant will be like, oh, that can't happen here or that won't happen. And it's like, probably not. No, to be honest, some form of it will.
Well, see, they don't have to actually murder you now like they did then.
Yeah.
They don't have to murder you and dispose of your body. Now they can just digitally erase you. They can just neutralize you by removing your voice from the community. So it'll happen differently. It's like what they're doing with Rogan. You have to be careful, or the government will just erase your point of view, demonize you, destroy your ability to express yourselves if you have wrongthink, if you have a bad opinion.
They used to ostracize people, throw them out of the country, and not let them back in. But now, that was before electricity and telephones and stuff.
They don't even have to do that now. They just shut you down.
Well, that's why it's called character assassination. The entire idea is you neutralize the threat that somebody poses by telling the truth or by stating some facts that you find to be inconvenient. And
or by lying.
It's or by lying. Sure, you can perform a character assassination on someone who has actually lied, but yeah, it's very frightening. And at some point, you wonder how much they really have to do to cover anything up, how much information they really need to hide from the people. It seems to me that all you really have to do is attack and character assassinate the people who are speaking the truth. And then even if the facts seem fishy to the general public and they're not willing to buy into your narrative, they're going to be too scared to say anything.
They take like a wait and watch approach. And if the person ends up getting busted, it almost doesn't matter if they were right or wrong. They're like, I don't want that to happen to me.
Right.
This is why I've been saying for a while, abolish the police. You look at what's going on up in Ontario when that cop arrests that 78-year-old man. Here's the crazy thing. So there's this viral video where 78-year-old man's honking his horn. The cop arrests him. This was before honking was banned. So this is just some cop deciding to bully an old man who honked his horn. You look at the cops who are seizing gasoline. You look at the cops who are defending Antifa. They don't care. They literally don't care. And it's crazy when I meet cops who are like, I'm a big fan of the show. And I'm just like, I hope you're one of the good ones because we got too many bad ones. The Capitol Police are all some really evil people. I mean, you look at what they were saying on TV, how they were lying about things. I get that there was a bad fight and there was rioting and stuff. I'm not discrediting that or anything like that. But it's crazy how they're willing to just say the most absurd and ridiculous statements. The next day I was, the craziest thing is they're like the left is claiming the stress of it resulted in officers taking their own lives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, man. We don't know why some officers did take their own lives.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's related or not, but it's just such a dirty, dirty thing. They're milking this as much as they can. I will tell you this. I'm most frustrated with? The people who actually rioted, fought with cops, and tried to break in and literally broke in the building. Because it's just like watching people, it's like watching someone walking down the road and they're like on the side of a cliff and then they look to their left and start to walk towards the cliff and you're like, please don't do that. And they go, I'll be fine. Like Alex Jones was there saying, stop, don't go inside, don't do it. They didn't listen to him.
A lot of young people thinking they're going to reload their save game if something goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, if you see in the movie, you just see we have all these people, suspicious-looking people, exhorting the crowd. Come this way, get in here, go into the Capitol, break in. They're just constantly berating these people, screaming at them. And you also have the Capitol Police, who are in many instances the aggressors here. They were firing flashbangs and tear gas grenades and pepper spray into the middle of the crowd.
That's what they
driving them forward rather than trying to keep them from coming forward. They were just firing into the middle of the crowd. And, the stuff that happened in the tunnel, it's now being revealed that Roseanne Boylan was probably beaten to death by a police officer.
Dude, command was probably like, we can't contain this. Just get them in the building. We'll bust them all later.
Well, I don't know about that, but in Ferguson, one of the nights I was down at the riots, people had stopped rioting and protesting. It was maybe like the fifth night. They were just dancing in the street playing music. One cop from the police line at the far end of West Florissant casually walked up, pulled a flashbang, and just threw it into a crowd of dancing people. And that immediately started a riot. People then started screaming, running towards the police, yelling. And then all of a sudden, people who didn't live in the neighborhood started smashing windows and stealing stuff. The cops did that. So when I say abolish the police, I'm telling you this right now. You look at what is going on with the purging of wrongthink. They start by saying if you're unvaccinated, there's a mandate, you're fired. Well, guess what? Only the people that fall in line do as they're told are going to remain on as police. They're going to remain in military. Then they're going to put those National Guardsmen in your schools, teach your kids like they're doing in New Mexico. They're having them drive school buses in Massachusetts. They're going to replace more and more jobs because of the emergency and the labor shortage with National Guard. And they've already purged the ranks of anybody who would disobey the narrative. Right. You don't want to live under that boot. So your best bet right now is just, hey, call the bluff of the left. Yeah, abolish the police. And then when they're like, no, I thought you wanted to. I think it's funny when the left, they freak out because I tweeted abolish the police. And they're like, well, I mean, but he wants militias. And I'm like, that's literally what you asked for.
Yeah.
You said community police. What do you think militias are?
Yeah, what did they think was going to... Well, social workers, actually, Tim, is what they want.
It's because they don't really want to abolish the police. They want control of the police.
Well, yes. No, that's exactly what it is.
And the police, with a smile on their face, are putting boots on people's necks.
It's funny, you mentioned the police officers, and yes, there were officers harmed on January 6th. That's very unfortunate. However, I should point out that according to the Major Cities Chiefs Association, 72% of major city law enforcement agencies had officers harmed during the BLM riots. 72%. That is a massive number.
And I don't care. I literally don't care
That they were injured. I mean, I think it's horrible when anyone gets injured
if
or
you're
is
gonna
assaulted.
if you're gonna show up to Attila's gym and arrest the owners or try and prosecute them and seize money from their bank accounts, you want sympathy from me. The police in this country
I have no sympathy
lost.
for that guy. No.
I'm just look, man. There are small offices and departments. I'll put it this way: sheriff's offices with duly elected law enforcement. Oh, I think they're great. They still do bad things. There was a woman who was arrested for opening her cafe during lockdown, and it was the sheriffs who came and arrested her, the deputies.
Yep.
That's bad. But these big city police departments, what I'm referring to specifically, they did nothing while the riots were happening.
It's true.
And when it happened, I said, well, look, I don't blame them for defending these businesses from people who won't support them. But then they turn around and became the vandals who locked down their businesses and destroyed these people's lives. So I sit back at these cities and I'm like, y'all deserve each other. But here's my main point. If the police departments are purged of wrong thinkers and all that's left are going to be those who toe the line, and that's what we've seen over the past 2 years, the cops who stayed on during the BLM riots after all the disrespect, that's a great mental test, psychological test. Are you willing to endure extreme pressure where everyone hates you, where we won't support you, and you shut your mouth and get on your knees? And these officers who stayed said yes. That's a good sign for a despot. They then said, okay, now you got to inject yourself with something. And a bunch of them were like, nah, that's too far for me. But a lot of them said, yes, sir, may I have another?
Yeah.
And they got their second shot and their boosters. And now we're at the point where you think that these departments will defend your right to liberty? No.
No, certainly
not. If there
not.
ever was a group of people who were going to goose step to the marching orders of a despot, it is the modern police that have remained through all of this, refusing to stand up for themselves, refusing to stand up for others, falling in line over overtly illegal orders and rule by decree. I'm not going to defend any of those people.
Yeah,
man.
when you talk about illegal orders, because it's called law enforcement. So if you're getting illegal orders from a top-down authority and you're the law enforcement, you're supposed to not follow the illegal order and stay lawful.
They don't care about what's legal. They don't know what's legal. There have been many instances in my life where I've had cops tell me that something was illegal and it wasn't. New York is a great example. That's a frozen zone, the cop told me and my friends during Occupy Wall Street. And I'm like, you made that up. It's not even, there's no frozen zones. They just made it up one day. And you see what's going on with the BLM mural painted in New York City. The 27 officers who defended it on an illegal seizure of taxpayer funds for a political message.
Yep.
And the police were like, boss told me to do it. I'll arrest anybody who opposes me. Yo, we're in dark times now, man.
Agreed. I think, but in terms of, and maybe this is a small white pill, but I think there's a white pill here. And despite all of the media propaganda, a large number of the American people, or a large swath of the population, are still seeing through this. According to a Rasmussen report survey that was done back in July, only about 50% of the population who was surveyed at that time supported Nancy Pelosi's January 6th committee in investigating that, whereas 2/3 of American citizens surveyed wanted an investigation into the 2020 BLM riots. So no matter how much they're lying about this or trying to call this an insurrection and tell us to ignore that, the majority of the American people do see the truth about it.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.